we were talking about some of the situation that's going on in New York City, where Mamdani, this crazy left-wing effective communist, has won the nomination for the Democrat side of the mayoralty. There has not yet been a decision by Andrew Cuomo about whether he's going to run as an independent or drop out. To me, and I'm just kind of assessing this from afar, the decision has to be Eric Adams versus Mamdani. I think that's the only way Mamdani loses. If there's multiple independents, if you have a Republican nominee like Curtis Lewa running aggressively, I just don't. The more opposition there is to Mamdani, the better it is for his likelihood. But I bet you were like me. Over the weekend, a lot of deep dives into his videos started to go public. And these are, I would say, truly outrageous perspectives that he has adopted publicly. And I know you've been following it. You've got some you want to kind of shine a spotlight on.
Yes, and it's a shame because I keep hoping that New York is going to wake up and go through a Giuliani, Bloomberg golden era again. But you have a lot of people that know nothing about that era. That's part of the problem. The people like me who grew up in very dangerous New York City, and people always say, "Oh no, it was very dangerous in the '70s." The most dangerous was the late '80s, early '90s. By the numbers, no question. Go check it out for yourself. Over 2,000 murders in New York City when I was in grammar school in 1990, 1991. 2,000 plus murders. Think about that. All right. New York City has gotten down as low as, I think, below 300 at one point in the last decade.
Yeah.
So massive, massive. And people say, well, that's just murders. Yeah, but murders are a very solid proxy for overall, particularly violent crime, but crime in general. It's tough to hide dead bodies, and people are upset about them, right? Burglaries don't necessarily get reported or investigated. I mean, there's other things, ways you can mess with the stats. Murders are murders. So a lot of people, Clay, who voted for Mamdani are either too young, because he was huge with Gen Z, or they came here in the last 15 or 20 years. They don't know. They're foreigners who have become, green card holders, or they maybe become citizens. And now they're saying, oh yeah, I like this guy. I like what he's saying. He's going to make, he's going to make food cheaper in the kebab stands. He's going to make groceries cheaper. He's talking about all this stuff. Let's get into some of the things that this guy has actually said. The commie Mamdani. Here he is. I mean, we got so many of these. I'll start with this one. He talked about increasing. Well, here, let's do this one first. Billionaires. We shouldn't even have. This is cut 7. We shouldn't even have billionaires. Play 7.
You are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer for all of them.
I hate this so much because we can sit here, Clay, and we will, and make all the arguments about how you can take all the money from the, I don't know, 100, 200 billionaires, whatever it is in New York City, or a few hundred billionaires, maybe maximum. You could take all the money that they have and try to redistribute it. You wouldn't solve poverty in New York City for a year. Okay, it wouldn't change it. They're spending $14 billion a year just on the illegals in New York City. $14 billion a year on special care for illegals. You think you're going to seize a few $100 billion from New York's billionaires? You're going to fix the problems? But even beside that, Clay, the whole argument here is just one about envy. It's one about emotion. This is why it's so pernicious and why communism keeps creeping up wherever there's prosperity in the West. And it's because it just makes people who are upset feel better about themselves to think that there's some other person who's their problem.
Look, I really do think it sums up the flaw of capitalism is it creates wealth and leisure, which leads to the illusion that capitalism is unnecessary. And the reason we have the wealth and the leisure that exists in this country, and by leisure, I mean you don't have to constantly be in a mad scramble to have water or food or the ability to, the poor people in the United States are not actually poor relative to the standards for what poverty looks like in the rest of the world. Our poor people, I think one of the great stats that kind of brings this home, even in a country like India, the poorest people in the United States would be in the top 20% richest in India. That's true for almost every country that is in the world. The poorest people here would be among the wealthiest anywhere else. And if you wonder why people are risking their lives to come through the Darien Gap during the Biden era or come across the Rio Grande, it's because even being poor in the United States makes you wealthy in many other countries, and that's an incredible degree that we have. But
I mean,
the billionaire
poverty, it comes along with obesity in this country, which is an excess, for example, of food. There's a correlation between poverty and obesity. There were times, actually, like all of human history to the last 100 or so years, where poverty and starvation were actually what were correlated.
And actually being fat was a sign of tremendous wealth because it meant that you had, to your point, like all
this
the
is
kings.
What I try to tell my wife, but she wanted me to get in shape anyway. You know, it's kind of sad.
If you go back and look at all the kings, in England back in the day, for instance, when they became super wealthy, they were often very fat because that meant that you had the ability to have too much to eat, which was a rarity. But the billionaire thing to me is it's so important for everybody to focus on. First of all, I want there to be way more billionaires. I want there to be way more millionaires. I want the overall pie of economic wealth in the United States to grow massively, and I want everybody to be able to feast on economic success, whatever your current status of life is. But this is so important, and I think you're a perfect example of this, because what this happens is, and you're going to start to see this in earnest, I think I would even argue this is a generational story that you need to put a pin in and pay attention to. People who have success in life, who have wealth, are far more mobile in general than people who do not have success in life and do not have great opportunity. Right? With wealth comes the ability to go to different places, to relocate your life. And what a lot of people found out during COVID is they could move to different parts of the United States or even the world, and they would have never tested it but for COVID. And they found out, hey, I can be running Wall Street from Miami just as well as I can from Greenwich, Connecticut, or a super luxury pad somewhere in a high-rise building overlooking Central Park. And what you are going to see, and I want all of you to kind of think about this because it's going to happen, LA, Chicago, New York City, they are going to increasingly tax the successful people in these communities, and Mamdani is reflective of this. And the successful people, the most successful people in those communities, you just saw Ken Griffin, Citadel. He just up and said, screw it, Chicago's not safe. I'm moving all my people to Miami. You are going to see, I just mentioned Buck, born and raised New York City kid who probably would love to have stayed in New York City, but you start to have success and you look at other parts of the country and they're grabbing so much of your money that at some point you just say, enough, I can't deal with this anymore, even in a city that you may have grown up in and loved.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because you can also see the recent history of cities that have gone down this pathway, and it is universally a bad idea. It universally creates more negative things, whether it's crime, disorder, filth on the streets, economic flight from the city. This is we go through this over and over again, but brings me back, Clay. The reason I'm concerned about Mamdani is that he is good, he is slick, he is adept at appealing to people's emotions who are frustrated and who don't want to even get into the merits of the argument. They want an excuse. It is the politics of envy. Somebody else has it better than me. By the way, you don't even know. I mean, there's some of the happiest people I know lead some of the most humble and basic lives, and truly some of the most miserable people I know have the most money and the most influence and the most power, and they just can't escape their daily misery. But put that aside for a second. And I know that sounds like a cliche. I swear it is true. Okay. I mean, I could go through chapter and verse, people who have, are having a very sort of, not moderate is not the word I'm looking for. What do you call modest, very modest life in America. And they're very, very happy. And people who have incredible lives of extravagance and they're truly miserable. But again, aside, Clay, this is the politics of somebody is excusing all of my choices and says they're going to make my problems go away. And it never works. It never works. It's not going to work this time. It has never worked before, but people like to believe. This is why socialism is actually a religion. I mean, communism is a religion. This is not an economic system because the economics can't work. We just went through it. You can take all the money from the rich people in New York. It's not going to pay for all the poor people stuff forever. It's not going to make the poor people not poor, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They want this. They feel this. And Mamdani feeds it to them. He gives it to them. He makes it seem like none of this is anyone's fault. No one's station in life is the result of choices. No one's. It's the system.
And what's going to happen is the system is going to have a lot less money. Because when you go dive into the actual revenue produced by taxation, the billionaires that Mamdani claims shouldn't exist. In fact, if New York wants to have the best quality of life, they should have way more billionaires. They're going to leave. And then that's going to create a vicious cycle because you're going to have to increase taxes in order to try to replicate the services that the taxes are creating now. The tax dollars are going to leave. They're going to go to states like Florida, Tennessee, Texas, where there's zero state income tax. I mean, again, this is a generational flaw of Democrats that I think is going to be exposed in a big way. And again, if you make $1 million, let's say you make $1 million a year. Not that many people who make $1 million a year, but let's say you do. You're paying $150,000 extra for the privilege of living in New York City. Okay. If you make $10 million, you're paying $1.5 million for the privilege of living in New York. You're getting up to the high levels above $10 million. Think about, even at $1 million, you can pay an entire mortgage living in Tennessee or Texas or Florida that increases your assets compared to what you're paying. And people would say, okay, well, there's a benefit to living in New York City, right? Or Chicago or LA. I'm here to tell y'all, I've spent a lot of time in all these places. It's fun to visit. There's no city in America I would pay $150,000 extra of my tax dollars to live in compared to Florida, Tennessee, or Texas.
I know. You guys have good food in Nashville too. I can't even throw shade at some of these other cities. 30 years ago, New Yorkers, I'm just telling you guys the truth. New Yorkers could be like, honestly, we just have better food than you guys. And that was true of most cities in America 30 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago. Nashville, Charleston, Atlanta. I mean, you just look at, Phoenix. These places all have great food now. I mean, it's great.
I'm not even cool enough to know good restaurant stuff. I've never even noticed that, but I am told that the foodie scene for people who love restaurants in a city like where I live, Nashville, is out of control. Like, you can't even keep up with it.
Well, and Nashville punches way above its weight, but every decent mid-sized city and above in America has great food now. So I'm saying some of the advantages that New York used to have as a place, New York, Chicago, and LA used to just have better job opportunities and better food than most of the rest of the country. And it just, you can say you want to live in a rural area. That's great. That's fine. But if you're looking to work at a top law firm and you want to go to a Michelin 3-star restaurant, those were really, and San Francisco too, those are really the choices that you had. It's just not true anymore. To your point, you can do these jobs from wherever. Everywhere's got great food. You can buy anything anywhere you want now thanks to the internet. But Clay, I mean, we can make these arguments all day. Here's a stat. 1% of New Yorkers pay 50% of New York City's tax rate. 1%. 1 in 100 people are paying for 50 people. And Mamdani's like, that's not enough. It's unequal. How much more does it have to be? How much more is there going to be? Look, this is the problem, friends, is these budgets can get out of control and the Democrats want to keep spending us into oblivion. You need to take action. Next week, the U.S. dollar is going to be at the center of a debate among nations gathering in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The BRIC nations are meeting, okay? Now, these nations want to move away from the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. They're trying to do this slowly but surely. If that happens, our quality of life takes a huge hit and the dollar takes a bath. It's going to be rough. You should prepare for this possibility today and also just diversify because inflation is going to continue slowly but surely. I know Trump's doing a great job with it. But in the next 10, 15 years, going to chip away at that dollar. How can you protect your IRA or 401k? It's on you to take action, by the way. You can't rely on the government to protect you here. How can you protect your IRA or 401k? Gold with the Birch Gold Group. Diversify with Birch Gold. Gold has been a safe haven in times of economic uncertainty all throughout history. Birch Gold is who I buy my gold from, and they will treat you well. Get a free info kit on tax sheltered gold IRAs by texting my name, Buck, to 989898. Arm yourself with info to diversify your retirement savings. Text Buck to 989898 and go with Birch Gold.